Welcome back to Cultivating Resilience. Strong relationships are essential to resilience, especially in the workplace. Today we're talking about how connection and community impact well-being at work. Tawny, thank you so much for being here today. Tell me a little bit about why relationships in the workplace matter.
Yeah, I think anyone can think about if they've worked anywhere. If they have had a relationship with someone in that setting, work often feels a little bit better. And so relationships are huge when it comes to this. Anytime we can feel connected and that sense of belonging, we're often, happier at work, our productivity is better, we feel valued.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. We don't really talk about the fact that we spend probably 40 plus hours a week. Like sometimes I'm like, I have more interactions with workplace people than I do significant others or friendships. Why do you think we don't really talk about this as a society and how important those workplace relationships are?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's a great question. I think it's sort of like this mentality of like, we're just going to work, right? It's just like what we do, we go to work. But it is actually really fascinating, and you think about, just how much time you do spend with your coworkers and how it might feel, again, like if you were in poor relationship with them, to be spending so much time with someone that maybe it didn't feel great to be together in shared space. And so I think it is something probably we should reflect on more and focus more on, but it is a really great question.
So as a professional, how can I be attuned and intentional about this? If I know, okay, I'm going to be surrounded by these particular relationships a lot of my time, and we know relationships influence self-esteem, how I think or feel about myself, how do I be intentional about cultivating those healthy workplace relationships?
We all get very busy, and so just making the time, honestly, and allowing people to have space to be able to share ideas or thoughts or opinions, and really that collaboration probably is, in both ways, to be able to sit down and have whether it's a designated time or day, whether it's formal or informal, just providing that space. Again, I think it gets really easy to get caught up in like the day-to-day, and again, you want to check things off of a list, and really just sitting down and allowing that time to be able to connect on personal and professional things, I think is both valuable.
Yeah, so I hear you saying just really being intentional about finding space and time to cultivate those relationships, showing up as your real self in the work so that those relationships feel genuine and authentic. What about when it isn't going great? When I'm in the workplace and I am having a struggled relationship with someone, how do I navigate that as a professional?
I think it's really important to be curious. I think it isn't helpful if you don't address it. And oftentimes I've found that addressing conflict in a way that is from a place of curiosity and empathy, it actually strengthens those relationships. I think the worry is that we're gonna make someone upset or mad when they're probably feeling the same way, and it might feel validating to them for someone to say something. It feels like maybe something's not right here. And so just having, again, like the courage to be able to say like something doesn't feel great. And if it's not, an in-person conversation, then like what other ways can you do that to be able to share, just your thoughts and your feelings on how that connection is.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is really that crucial conversations are such an important piece of cultivating healthy relationships in the workplace. Now, we all hear about those workplace cultures where behind closed door talks, meeting after meetings, talking poorly about Sally, and I can't believe I have to work on this project with her. How do we protect ourselves from those type of cultures, or be aware if that's going on, how to move against that so we're not part of a culture that probably is draining even for us?
Yeah, I think it is really important to work at a place that is going to align with your personal values, and that place that you work at upholds those values. I think that makes it a lot easier to maintain a sense of culture that you're aiming for, sort of sets the tone across the board, which then makes it easier to have crucial conversations when things feel off. But I think, again, like having opportunities to have conversations, whether it's like a one-on-one or as a team, to just talk about things that we're noticing. If there's a little more gossip or whatever you want to say, how do we shift our perspectives to be more positive? And And whether that's, colleague to colleague or from a supervisor to supervisee, but the ability to kind of really just call those things out and find ways then to, maybe do some restore or some repair if we're feeling like we're headed in a more negative direction.
What I really hear you saying is that it's so important to know our own values. And so if you're coming to my office talking bad about someone, saying like, that sounds really hard, you should go talk to them, rather than it's probably easy for us as humans just to kind of join in on the bandwagon. It helps us maybe feel a sense of belonging, but then we don't always feel like our wellness and our resilience is really being cultivated because we're kind of acting in a way that is counter to our values. How do I stay aware of that as a professional?
Yeah, I think you really have to do some reflection of how did that feel. I know for me personally where, in the moment you really just want to connect with that person and validate, and then you're like, maybe I should have challenged them a little bit on that. And I think it's okay to go back to that conversation and say, I hear what you're saying and I validate what you're feeling. And also maybe here's a different way to think about that. Here's a way maybe that you could address this differently, because then are we doing that person a disservice by just agreeing with them? While it does maybe help them feel more connected to us, is that really what they need?
Yeah.
And so I think it is okay to just show humility in that that's not actually how I wanted to represent myself or represent, an agency or whatever it may be, to go back to those conversations and you can learn from those mistakes. So.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear you saying too is almost practicing like empathy and compassion. And so if I know Susie is struggling and another person came to complain about Susie, part of that too is like recognizing Susie's a real human. And how would I want people to talk about me if I'm struggling, or how would I want them to approach me, or how would I want to be felt sense part of the team even if I was struggling? So how do we cultivate some of that empathy, especially when we're like irritated and frustrated?
Yeah, it can be really hard, right? And especially when you're hearing things that don't sit well with you. And so you may not, empathy may not be the first thing that comes up for you. But I think you're right. We do have to look across all relationships that we have and think about how would we want people to talk about me if I was in that situation. And also allowing, we're not perfect. And so people are going to have feelings about other people in the workplace. They're probably going to share those frustrations, right? Especially if they're now impacting me and my ability to do my work. And so again, I think just having conversations with each other of like, what do you expect out of me? What do you expect out of this relationship? How might I know when you are not doing well or when someone else is not doing well? And really just being open and allowing people to share what they're hoping for, so then you know what to check in on.
Yeah, I think everything you're really talking about, it all helps us create a greater sense of belonging in the workplace. And I think when we feel a greater sense of belonging in the workplace, we're more likely to be psychologically well, our mental health is more taken care of. We can then have motivation and direction and be more productive and be aligned with the goals that we have.
Yes.
Strong workplace relationships don't just make work more enjoyable, they make us more resilient. Let's keep building resilience and finding balance, one day at a time.